horses and cars. Back in the day, horses were everything. They weren't just a way to get around, they were a lifeline. A horse could plow your fields, carry your goods to market, or take you into town. Owning a horse was common, but not all horses were equal. The wealthier you were, the better the horse. A strong, fast steed, bred for speed or battle, while the common folk often made do with simpler, hardier breeds. But then came a turning point. In 1886, this motherfucker invented the first car, the Benz patent motor wagon, a strange, noisy contraption that many people mocked. Some even said, "This will never replace the horse." And honestly, if I had lived back then and all I'd ever known were horses, I'd probably say the same thing. Those early cars were slow, unreliable, and ridiculously expensive, a way for the wealthy to show off rather than a serious means of transport. Something like superyachts today. Yet, over the next few decades, cars started to improve. With Henry Ford's Model T in 1908, cars became cheaper and more reliable, though through some questionable means. By the mid-20th century, cars had become a staple of modern life, affordable, practical, and accessible to the average Joe. And what about the horse? Well, as cars took over, horses began to fade from everyday life. Now, owning a horse is considered a luxury. It's not just about buying the horse, it's about having the land, the resources, and the time to care for it. Or, paying other people to care for it. Where once they were tools of the common man, horses have become a symbol of wealth and leisure, reserved for sports, ranches, and countryside estates. Big city and village life. Back in the day, most of the world's population lived in rural areas, in small villages or farming communities. Life was simple, but opportunities were limited. Meanwhile, the upper classes and some of the wealthier middle class lived in the big cities, centers of power, culture, and influence. For centuries, there have been countless stories of people from small towns or villages leaving for the big city, chasing dreams of opportunity, personal growth, and professional success. The cities offered a chance to meet new people, escape the boring rural life, and build something bigger. But then came a major turning point, the Industrial Revolution in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. Factories sprang up in cities, creating a huge demand for workers. Advances in transportation, like railroads, made it easier and cheaper for people to migrate to urban centers. This marked the beginning of mass urbanization. By the 20th century, cities were no longer just for the elite. They were teeming with workers, families, and everyday folks trying to carve out a better life. But the main word is trying. Ask the children. You can't. They're in the mines. However, as cities grew crowded and chaotic, the wealthy began to retreat. Their shiny big cities got full of peasants. Imagine living with peasants. With its cleaner air, open spaces, and peace, the countryside became the ideal escape for those who could afford it. Mansions and sprawling estates sprang up in rural areas, far from the noise and pollution of city life. You want to live in the big city? Look, it's so shiny. You will be rich. Go! Hey, this is all bullshit. Everything stinks. Everyone is a dickhead, and I live in misery. Okay, bye. Some argue that humans were never meant to live in big cities. They say it's unnatural to be crammed into small apartments, surrounded by strangers in equally small spaces. Our natural habitat, they suggest, is in small communities where we have room to breathe and are surrounded by people we know, and sometimes even trust. Even in cities, we've tried to recreate this. Neighborhoods and urban centers are an attempt to mimic that sense of community and familiarity. Apart from their other functions, I 100% know nothing about. But the truth is, for many, city life remains an overwhelming maze of noise, anonymity, and stress, a stark contrast to the rural life we left behind. Home cooking and dining out. Both are expensive these days. Let's not kid ourselves. Whether you're cooking at home or eating out, the cost can be ridiculous. But beyond our current economic struggles, there's another shift. Being able to cook a proper, fresh meal at home has become a luxury. Back in the day, home cooking was the standard. It wasn't just what most people ate, it was what they could afford. Food was cheaper, and preparing a meal didn't take the same toll it does today. Families gathered around a table to share traditional homemade dishes, often cooked by a loved one. Meanwhile, the rich and wealthy had their luxuries. dining out at exclusive restaurants, hosting extravagant parties, or enjoying feasts prepared by private chefs. But things started to change. In the mid 20th century, dining out became more affordable and accessible to the average person. Chain restaurants began popping up, and suddenly, it wasn't just the elite who could enjoy a meal away from home. The rise of fast food in the 1950s and 60s took things even further. It wasn't just affordable, it was quick and easy, a perfect fit for the growing pace of modern life. Now, for many, takeout and delivery have replaced the traditional home-cooked meal. It's not just about the time it takes to cook, though let's be honest, after a long day, even 30 minutes in the kitchen can feel like an eternity. It's about energy. Grocery shopping, meal prep, and cleanup, it's a chore, and for most people, a break is worth the cost. Meanwhile, the wealthy have flipped the script. They've brought home cooking back as a luxury. With personal chefs and access to high-quality, organic ingredients, they can enjoy fresh, homemade meals without lifting a finger. While the rest of us settle for takeout containers, they're sitting down to balanced, beautifully crafted dishes, prepared with care and intention. What was once a basic, everyday ritual has become something many of us can only dream about. A proper, homemade meal, made from scratch, with time, energy, and love. Now let's look ahead. What about the things we have now that might become luxuries in the near future? Some shifts are already happening, and it's only a matter of time before they become a privilege for the few. Live interaction and digital interaction. Let's start with something that's already shifting in a big way. Live interaction versus digital interaction. Before technology, we only talked face-to-face. Obviously, there was no alternative. If you wanted to communicate, you had to physically be there. But then came the rise of communication technology. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, inventions like the telephone began changing how we interacted. At first, these technologies were expensive, exclusive, and only the wealthier could afford them. They were the first to experience the convenience of digital interaction, using telegraphs, telephones, and later, email and early messaging systems. Fast forward to now, and technology is more affordable than ever, except the new one. Most of us communicate digitally, whether it's through chat, video calls, or apps like Discord, Zoom, or the countless others available. Our world is moving faster and faster every year, and for many, especially those in big cities, it's getting harder to meet friends in person. Big distances, traffic jams, packed schedules, and endless chores, it's all too much. And yes, the rich and wealthy use digital interaction too. But here's the thing, they also have the time and means to talk face-to-face. They can host gatherings, meet people over lunch, or fly halfway across the world to see someone. For the rest of us, live interaction is becoming more of a privilege. If our lives keep speeding up and the economy keeps getting worse, we'll have less and less time to see our friends face-to-face. It might become something of a luxury, reserved for those with the time, energy, and resources to make it happen. Reading books. Less and less people are reading books these days, and there are plenty of reasons for that. For one, our lives are busier than ever. Between work, chores, and constant notifications, it's hard to find a quiet moment to sit down and read. And then there's the convenience factor. Why read a book when you can just listen to an audiobook or watch a summary video on YouTube? Some studies already show a decline in book reading, and if this trend continues, I'd say we might hit the lowest point in book reading within the next 10 to 15 years. But let me clarify. I'm not saying we'll stop reading books entirely. Instead, more people will move toward alternatives like audiobooks, which are far more convenient. You can listen to them while driving, working out, or even doing the dishes. Physical books, on the other hand, require time, not just to read, but to truly experience. Reading a book means immersing yourself, shutting out distractions, and focusing on nothing but the words on the page. And let's be real, how often do we get that kind of peace these days? The wealthy, however, have always been readers, and I don't see that changing. Books offer a kind of knowledge and reflection that's hard to replicate. They allow you to think deeply, to pause and absorb. The rich will still read, not just because they can afford books, but because they can afford the time to read them without distraction. As life becomes faster and distractions multiply, I think reading a physical book at peace will become a luxury. It's not just about owning a book, it's about having the time, space, and quiet to truly enjoy it. Privacy. This would be a great place for some VPN ad. As technology has taken over our lives, so has our privacy. Bit by bit, click by click. Honestly, we're already living in some kind of George Orwell fiction, with algorithms tracking everything we do online just to recommend us the next video or product. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. With advancements in technology, our privacy online will only keep shrinking. And guess what? Online is where most of us spend most of our time. We all know that our phones, computers, and pretty much anything with a camera or microphone are constantly listening to us and watching us. Countless experiments have proven it. Seriously, say new shoes near your phone and watch the ads roll in. So, if privacy isn't already a thing of the past, it's headed that way fast. Sure, there are ways to protect yourself. This would be another great spot for an ad, by the way. There are guides on YouTube that teach you how to vanish digitally, but let's be honest, it's the equivalent of becoming a digital hermit. Now think about the richest people in the world. How much do you really know about them? Not the famous ones, the countless other wealthy individuals who stay under the radar. Exactly. Privacy is already a luxury for them. They can afford to protect their information and live quietly in ways we can't. My prediction? Privacy will become an even greater luxury. Not that it isn't already, but achieving it will get even harder. The rest of us will just have to live with the fact that our lives are an open book, for better or worse. Luxury isn't about money. It's about what's rare. And one thing that's becoming more and more rare is time. So I won't take any more of yours. I'll just say, like and subscribe. Bye.